folks. Widge Walls with needcoffee.com here. Back again on the couch for another Stayhomer review. Um, so, let me explain a couple things. First of all, if you hear chewing sounds, that's my dog in her house, and I bribed her to hopefully not, try to impart any guest information, like a guest reviewer, since it would normally just be complaining because I haven't fed her in 10 minutes. The second thing is, I honestly thought I would be talking to you right now about the new film Godzilla vs. Kong. The problem is I was confused as to when it was coming out because they apparently did like fan screenings or something in actual cinemas here last Thursday. So I thought it was coming out Friday, so I went, okay, yay, I can do a Stayhomer. Well, it turns out it's not coming out until Wednesday, which actually means because today's Tuesday, they're probably going to start showing it tonight. I have no idea what's happening anymore. Time has broken down. So, because I couldn't do that, I was still in the mood for some kaiju. So what I did was, I sought out the original. When I say original, it has probably absolutely nothing to do with the new film that's coming out, but the 1962 King Kong versus Godzilla. See, the title is reversed there. So, let's roll with it. Synopsis. The synopsis is basically 2 tracks, and you know where this is leading because the spoiler's in the title. You have a nuclear sub that's in the Arctic doing explorations and runs into Godzilla. Now, I don't know if they actually free Godzilla or they just happen upon Godzilla. I was not clear about that. But that's not a spoiler. You pretty much knew Godzilla was going to show up, right? And it honestly didn't matter how, because it's 1962 and they got to show up and fight. Then in another track, and this is a little weird, so stay with me. There's a pharmaceutical company in Japan that wants some kind of marketing stunt to promote their products. So they decide, after hearing from the scientist who's been to a remote island who found some berries with unusual properties there, the natives on that island have a large animal that they worship as a god. And so the pharmaceutical company sends 2 incredibly unqualified people from, it looks like the marketing and or the television camera department, unclear, to go and capture said animal / god, which, as you've already anticipated, is King Kong. Again, no spoilers. There were going to be 2, you could basically say King Kong showed up because of reasons, Godzilla showed up because of reasons, and then they come together and fight, which is also not a spoiler because it's in the title. So that's your synopsis. So let me explain one thing. First of all, I initially started watching the American version of this, and the American version, just like with the original Godzilla, they shot new footage and basically re-edited it to make it more, I guess, American friendly. They did the same thing here, and about 3 minutes in, I was sitting there going, this doesn't feel right. This feels tampered with. And I went and looked and found the Japanese version with English subtitles, which I then turned around and watched. And they're quite different. Again, new footage for the American version. I saw this, it's so long ago, I can't even tell you which version that I saw, because it was back in 1915, and I don't remember. Those brain cells have died. So, all that being said, there's one thing we should state first out of the gate to get it out of the way. And that is, King Kong vs. Godzilla is a film of its time. And I say that as a euphemism for the fact that it is a little bit racist. In that, on the scenes on said remote island, the background islanders are obviously people that they just pulled off the street, a lot of whom are in brownface, and, dressed in what I can only assume are the, stereotypical insert remote island native dress here type of situation. Um, so there is that to bear in mind. It was a different time in a different place. So there's that. Also, watching the film, I was struck by the fact that it felt very patchwork. And as you know, if you've been watching these things for a while, after the film, I have my ritual going to tinkle moment. And occasionally I will look things up while I'm tinkling. And I looked up the film to see, well, what was this? And it appears that Ishiro Honda, who is the director, who also directed the original Godzilla, wanted to do a satire of marketing in Japan. So his point was, and I read this on Wikipedia, which is always right, basically wanted to do a satirical look at that, whereas companies, instead of, actually just making a good product that people would like, would want to get sponsors and weird stunts and everything, and to try to get people's attention, which Honda thought was dumbing everything down. So that explained why you have this thing of, well, it's like, well, we needed a Godzilla King Kong movie, and then Honda comes in and kind of staples this satirical thing onto it. And the other thing too is, I don't know about you, but I think there's two, usually when I watch a Godzilla movie, I have not seen them all. I believe there are 76. I find that they are either comedies or unintentional comedies. And in the first category, I would put intentional comedies that are designed to look like unintentional comedies, meaning they're playing it so straight and so seriously, they know it's ridiculous, and thus it's funny. You cannot tell me that the people behind Godzilla 2000, weren't having a laugh. The closing line of that film is still the hardest I have laughed in a cinema, apart from Battlefield Earth. And I went to see that with Bailey when it came out back in 1941, and we almost died. We were laughing so hard. So those are the two sort of categories for Godzilla movies for me, I find. So I see it put in the horror genre, but there's nothing really horrific in it. It's science fiction at best, and then a bit of a comedy, especially this one, because you have to the point where the two guys they send to the island felt to me like a bit of Abbott and Costello, like they were a double act. You have the comedic boss who, at some point he was so over the top, I just wanted something to eat him. It didn't have to be King Kong, it didn't have to be Godzilla. A large porpoise could have come up and knocked him into the sea, and something then could have ate him, and I would have been fine. But, so you had a lot of that going on. There's a romantic through line, with another character, and even though they cut back to him to say, no, really, he's still in the movie, I sort of forgot he was in the movie. I kept going, wait a minute, who's this guy? Oh, yeah, that's the boyfriend. Okay, right. So you have all of that going on. And so there's a lot happening, and even with all of that, there manages to be more Godzilla in this movie than there was in the recent American Godzilla. And no, I will never stop complaining about that. So you have all of that happening. But the point is, do you get to see the creatures fight? It's in the title. And the answer is, yes, you do. But I must warn you, if you are used to, you're probably used to Godzilla. I know this is this, think they call it suitmation. There's a Japanese word for it, which I won't say here because I would butcher and destroy it. And I wouldn't be that disrespectful. But guys in suits, right? So I'm sure you're familiar with Godzilla in a suit. You may not be familiar with King Kong being a guy in a suit because there was either, people are usually thinking of the the original, the stop motion, or the Peter Jackson 14-hour miniseries that came out later. I don't even remember the remake in the middle, what King Kong was there. I honestly don't remember. This is a dude in a suit. And it's not just a dude in a suit, it's a dude in a suit with long arms with hands that don't work. And it's very strange, which makes it even weirder when the two creatures face off and I don't know if it's supposed to be a war dance or what they're doing, but they like flapping their arms. I'm like, is this some kind of flying attack? Because, we've seen that before. We've seen large creatures taking flight, and I'm not talking Mothra. So we've seen that, but it's just very odd. And the fight is hilarious. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, and very dated. But here's what I will say in its favor, is that I think you already, I hope the people that are watching this, you're all obviously, well-read, erudite scholars of pop culture history. You know what you're getting in for when you go see, when you look up a vintage Godzilla movie, in, the Japanese, where they have a sense of humor, as opposed to here where it's, so you know what you're in for. And the movie does a really great job of, from literally the opening scene, setting up the fact that we're not taking this entirely seriously. It's probably a good idea if you don't either. So armed with that knowledge, it's much easier to go through all of the stuff. Like, for example, I'm sure you all remember the later Hunger Games films, which were completely unedited, right? They would show you, whereas in a normal movie, you'd have someone wind up at an elevator and then at the office they were going to, the later Hunger Games movie would show someone going all the way down the corridor and then in the elevator and then down another corridor and then to the office where they were going to. This would jump from, what felt like the middle of one scene to, well, now we're suddenly over here, and you have to sort of catch up. But again, I think if you know what it is, which is just ridiculous, then I think you can really have a good time with it. So yeah. In fact, I'll be interested to see if I have more fun with this or with Godzilla vs. Kong. We shall see. There you go. It's a fight. King Kong versus Godzilla versus Kong. Dun-na! 3 verses. It can't be. So, cup-wise, I will give it 3 cups out of 5. And the reason is because I had a good time. I was entertained. And again, the expectations were set up and delivered on. And yeah, I think that's really it. Should you see it? I think, honestly, in the same way that I think you should, you whippersnappers, you youngsters today who won't get off my lawn, you should, if you are enjoying the Marvel films, you should go back and watch that Incredible Hulk TV movie with Thor in it. And you should go and have to watch the the Captain America with the floppy wings on his head to get a better appreciation for what we have now. And you may look back on those things and maybe understand my generation a little better and appreciate what we went through. But in that same way, I think a very educational and entertaining double feature would be to watch this film from 1962 back to back with Godzilla vs. Kong. Just to have an appreciation for, you know, how technology has changed in the past 60 years. So yes, if you're a fan of monster films and Godzilla and whatnot, you absolutely should check this out if you haven't. And if all you've seen is the American version, you absolutely should check it out so that you can see where it all came from. And my dog is snoring. I'm so glad you found this review entertaining, Jan. Appreciate it. So yeah, that's King Kong versus Godzilla. So thanks so much for watching for another Stayhomer. I will be back hopefully quite soon with Godzilla versus Kong, and we'll compare and contrast maybe. Until then, remember, if you are buying stuff online, which I'm sure you are because the apocalypse is still happening, if you do buy through Amazon, go through needcoffee.com/Amazon. Takes you to the front page of Amazon, just like you've gone to the front page of Amazon, because you have. And then everything you buy on that session, we get kickbacks for. I know a lot of you are doing it because I can see it happening, and thank you. That helps pay for the server, which is unfortunately a necessity. Yeah, so in the meantime, until the next Stayhomer, please be safe, keep wearing a mask, keep washing your hands, get jabbed, right? Get vaccinated as soon as you can. And we'll see you next time on the Stayhomer Reviews. We'll be back on the couch. Bye.